What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Comm Chatter. We're not going to play Star Wars Squadrons today. We're just going to be in the briefing room, but I do have my very first actual pilot on the show. Today, joining me is Paul Sun-Hyung Lee, who plays Carson Teva in The Mandalorian and is a huge Star Wars fan. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me.
I am thrilled to have a pilot with me here in the briefing room today, and just hearing how much of a Star Wars fan you are these past few months has been so much fun, and I just knew that we had to talk. Especially, we're going to talk about Biggs a little later, but he is genuinely my favorite character in Star Wars, and so everyone was tagging me when you were telling that story about his helmet.
Yeah.
But I really want to get to know you and your Star Wars fandom to kick things off. So, what was your introduction to Star Wars like?
I was 5 years old, and it was the first movie my dad took my sister and I to see in the movie theaters. I'd never been in the theaters before, and, I had no idea what to expect, and that was it. I mean, yeah, watching that as a 5-year-old just totally blew my world, and, it's been a part of me ever since. I have vivid recollections of just sitting in the theater seats and just being blown away by the spectacle, and then just trying to recreate every moment that I saw on the screen with friends at different day camps or at school. And I remember we were part of a summer camp, and all the kids were playing. We were reenacting the very opening of the movie when the stormtroopers are storming the tent of four, and we had a group of kids. The unpopular kids were the rebel soldiers who were trying to hold the hallway, and the cool kids were the stormtroopers, and the main cool kid was Darth Vader. But it was really, it was one of those things that just leaves an indelible mark on you when you watch it at that age. And that was me. That was it right there. And I always say that Star Wars for me has been like road marks on my journey to adolescence, because my dad took my sister and I to see it when I was 5 years old. Then my babysitter took my sister and I to see Empire Strikes Back without my parents, and then my sister and I were old enough to see Return of the Jedi on our own. And so my sister's been with me every step of that Star Wars journey up until the prequels, obviously. But those are definite markers in my life. Every 3 years, we take that next step into independence and stuff. So, and the experiences were so different too. Uh, I was at 5 years old, completely unaware of the rest of the audience. Um, when I was watching when I was 8, watching Empire Strikes Back with my babysitter, I became very aware of the lineups that we had to wait in to get inside the theater, and how popular it was. And then for Return of the Jedi, I just remember it being so loud in the movie theater. People were shrieking. It was like being at a rock concert. Whenever a character showed up, people would just erupt in just pure out joy. And it was just an unbelievable feeling when you're 11 years old with your sister. You're out at the movies away from on your own, and it's like being at a rock concert. Like everybody just got swept up in the moment. And so it's no wonder that Star Wars has stuck with me and has been such a big part of my life.
Well, I mean, I love just the very beginning of that story about how even the popular kids and the unpopular kids were all unified and playing Star Wars together. Like, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Do you have a specific memory from A New Hope that just really a favorite scene or something that just grabbed you and like you were like, this is it?
You know, I've watched it so many times over the years, and it's hard to just sort of pinpoint one precise moment. But I guess, I mean, really, um, it's what sticks with me. The image that sticks with me is the Death Star, the trench run, and I know it's modeled after the movie The Dam Busters, and they really sort of mimic the bombing runs that the Allied forces were making on it. But it's just there's something about the kinetic motion of the way the starfighters, the X-wings are swooping in, the score of John Williams, the VFX, that you just get swept up in this epic battle for survival. And like I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it right now.
Me too.
Yeah. So that for me was just like they're on a clock. They're these snub-nosed fighters against this mammoth space station, and they're doing everything they can. And it was just so exhilarating. And then there you have Luke Skywalker, farm boy, thrown into into the cockpit of an X-wing fighter for the first time in his life, and he's in it. He's doing all the things that he kind of wanted to do. Yeah, that for me was just so moving. And you suffer tremendous losses as well, right? Biggs, everybody's getting blown away. You lose Gold Leader, you lose Red Leader. You think it's all done, and then Han Solo flies in with Millennium Falcon, and it's just like it was beautiful. It's beautiful. So that moment, I think, was for me something that has always sort of stuck with me.
That's my exact favorite scene from that movie as well. And it's A New Hope is my favorite Star Wars movie. But yeah, the trench run, like I watched that scene, if not the entire movie, like every day for a summer when my parents first showed it to me. And every day my dad would come home to work and it'd be at the trench run. He'd be like, Rebels winning again? Like, yeah, they sure are. I love pilots, and the trench run is a big reason for it.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite Star Wars story? Maybe not necessarily a movie, but out of everything that's ever been told, is there something that is kind of your gold standard?
When you talk about in what context, I guess, like on a set story that I heard, or a personal story, or
like a movie or a book, like an actual Star Wars story.
It's so interesting because I remember getting into the Timothy Zahn Heir to the Empire series afterwards. Like, I didn't even know that they had been released. A roommate of mine was like, "Have you read this trilogy?" And he says it took place after Return of the Jedi. I said, "No," and I gobbled them up. Like, I just consumed them, hardlined them, and it was just he got the tone so right, and it was such a beautiful way to continue the story while staying true to the characters. And it sounded legit. And I love the new characters they introduced. Obviously, that was the first introduction of Grand Admiral Thrawn. I love the whole idea of having to work with the bounty hunters again to sort of cobble together a space fleet. So that there is that whole idea that, okay, there's more, because the expanded universe for a while I wasn't really as interested in, just because it just felt so peripheral to it. I did enjoy Rogue Squadron, though, that whole series of books right there. Like, that was really cool, and following Wedge Antilles and the formation of that.
We're becoming best friends. I hope you know that.
Awesome. Yeah, and so there was that, and then I think really the excitement of the prequels coming out, I think really sort of was one of those moments in my life where I thought, because you think, oh, they're done, they're finished, they're not going to do any more Star Wars, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh no, they're doing the prequels. They're telling the story before episodes 4, 5, and 6, and you're like, what? And so you start to Jones. There's no wonder that people lined up for like a month before the movie theaters even started. That became a cultural event, which I thought was fantastic, because it really did capture the imagination of a lot of fans, and it reignited that passion. Now, the movies themselves, hit or miss, depending on how old you were when you watched them. I know a lot of younger people, that was their Star Wars. They grew up with that, and they have a lot of affection towards it, and that's awesome. For me, myself, I was just so happy to see Star Wars again on the big screen. And those kinds of stories, it really did open up the whole possibility of a life outside of the main three.
Mm.
And I kind of like that continuation of it. And you have where they're trying to discover the different iterations now and which combinations work. I mean, Mandalorian is the first one, sort of the gold star, that kind of like seems to have gotten it all right in terms of the storytelling, in terms of the place in the universe, the expansion of that universe, and the folding in of some of the expanded universe stories that have been out there and haven't been considered canon, and are now being sort of brought in and slightly reworked and retconned in a way. But they're there, which is great, because why get rid of such a vast resource of great characters and stories that a lot of fans know about, the hardcore fans at least, so there's that. And then for me too, I think Rogue One was stunning, just because it sort of gave the idea that it was a galactic conflict, that it was more than just that our merry band of heroes that was just the sort of the focal point. There was so much more to what was going on, and the stakes are so much higher, and it just seemed a little bit more real in that sense. It wasn't a swashbuckling adventure. It kind of was, but really it was this whole idea of the rebellion being bigger than it and more tenuous than it actually seemed to be in episodes, 4, 5, and 6. You looked at it like half of them didn't want to fight.
Right.
They're like, "Are you kidding? We got to run. This is time to hide." And I love that idea, the fact that they did not have their shit together. They were all squabbling within each other, amongst each other. And of course, when they started the battle over Scarif and the rebel fleet jumped in, I got goosebumps again because you have they're folding in footage, unused footage from Star Wars: A New
Yeah.
Hope. And then, they introduced Gold Squadron, Red Squadron, and I almost died. Like, I was crying seeing those seeing the actors and the ships fly in. And again, there's some fantastic VFX stuff being done, but the storytelling in the battle alone was tremendous as well. So it was kind of like they took my favorite one of Star Wars and they expanded it and they did another little side campaign to sort of keep me happy.
I totally agree. I want to. I'm going to save it for later. We're going to talk about like Rogue Squadrons, the movie coming out, because oh my god. But do you have a favorite background character? Like everyone always talks about, your Lukes, your Hans, the big characters of each trilogy. But do you have anyone that you feel like you might be the biggest fan of this character? Someone that's more like a B or a C tier?
Yeah, it's interesting. On both sides, there's kind of a couple. Wedge Antilles is one of my favorite ones, just because he's the only one to sort of survive all 3 movies, and other than the main 3, which is great. And they expand on him a little bit in the expanded universe stuff. Is it Heir to the Empire? Or is it Rogue Squadron, where one of the pilots, he notices that he's got a patch, and the patch has a dot on it, which means he survived the Death Star trench run and whatnot. And I love that layering in of reality, because I think a lot of military patches, they have that a distinction as well. If you've served in certain places, that your badge is just a little bit more different to signify the campaigns you've taken part of. So Wedge is one of them. Excuse me, phlegm, not COVID. On the Imperial side, I always got a kick out of Captain Piet and how he got promoted to Admiral, and how he was just like, he's just kind of thrust in the moment because he's a competent bridge officer who basically wants to warn Admiral Ozzel that, hey, there's something that's going on over here, and I think maybe we should check it out, because there's not supposed to be any life forms on Hoth. And Ozzel's like, no, he's your standard sort of admiral who thinks he knows it all, and his overconfidence is his undoing. And when Vader takes him out, and Piet's just standing there trying to go down, and then Vader just says, "Don't fail me, Admiral." He makes the jump from captain to admiral like that. Was for me kind of like, oh, that was really kind of scary but cool. And he makes it to Return of the Jedi, and like he's in command of the lead Star Destroyer, and he gets taken out by that A-wing pilot that makes the suicide run on the bridge. I kind of like that storyline, that arc, that whole arc, and to a lesser extent, General Veers too. His, the assault on Hoth, and there is that whole. I think there's a deleted scene where he gets taken out by a snow speeder, but it's that debate because it wasn't actually shown. Did he actually survive? And there's 2 ways of thinking about it. But those little minor characters stick out for me as well, and I think that's why I kind of, as much as I love the Rebel forces too, the Imperial forces are kind of cool in their own way, because they just look cooler. They've got the armor, they got the uniforms, they got the newest toys. But the Rebels, they're that plucky lot that just actually has the morals behind them and whatnot. And so there's so much to love about the Star Wars universe, is basically what I'm saying. So
Yeah. I mean, that's something that I love asking that question, because I do feel like one of the best things about Star Wars is that almost everyone has a story. It's almost like bizarre to look on Wikipedia and be like, that character doesn't have a name. Like, he had no lines, but he was there. And usually they have names at this point. But what you said about the costumes is a good segue into you're a cosplayer.
I am.
How did you start getting into that? And since you bring it up, which do you what do you like cosplaying more, Imperial or Rebel?
Okay, that's a great question. I got into cosplay kind of by accident. I've been acting for a number of years, and for the longest time, I kind of hated Halloween just because it was like dressing up, and I dress up for a living type thing. But it was always costumes that people made me wear. And it wasn't until I got kids that I really started to embrace that and get a bit more, and it became more fun. Excuse me, dressing up my kids. And then what happened was, it all started with Ghostbusters cosplay. Actually, it was the 35th anniversary of Ghostbusters. I was feeling old, and it was one of those things where I looked at it and I thought I'd always wanted a proton pack. And so, for whatever reason, I guess, midlife crisis, call it whatever. Instead of buying a motorcycle, I decided I wanted to build a proton pack. And so I set about trying to scratch build one out of foam core and Sintra. And I got all these plans off of GB Fans. And that's when I really started to discover how deep the rabbit hole went. And I started looking at other cosplays and seeing, like, really, really seeing now, because for the longest time I just sort of noticed that there's a lot of anime cosplayers, and if you don't know the shows, you don't know the characters, it kind of goes over your head and you're like, oh, okay, that's a really cool costume, but the significance doesn't affect me the same way as if, for example, I see a couple of guys dressed up like the security detachment on BSG. You're like, oh my god, okay, yeah, you guys look like legit hardcore. You look like the deck crew on the Galactica, or like the judges from Judge Dredd. You look at that and you go, wow, okay, the level.
I can't believe you like Battlestar Galactica too.
Oh man, I love Battlestar Galactica.
Me
Oh,
too.
okay, well, we're best friends. Did we become best friends? Yep.
Yes.
So it's all that, and that just, for me, that really sort of went hand in hand with cosplaying with replica prop building, because I wanted to get the proton pack to look just right. I wanted to look believable. And then that extended itself into the cosplay, because I wanted the jumpsuit to look right. I wanted the patch to look correct. I wanted to I wanted to look like I stepped off the screen. And that's when I started to discover, oh, I really started to enjoy that. And especially with the franchises that I loved, it became more of an obsessive hobby. And once I finished with Ghostbusters, and I pretty much did all that I wanted to do at that point, I kind of saw, I was at a charity function, and I'd seen members of the 501st before over the years, but this was my first chance to get a really close up sort of view at them. And I went, I remember, instead of going into the main banquet hall and having dinner, I hung out with a few of the troopers that were there and just asked them a billion questions about their costumes and how they built them and how comfortable they were and this and that. And so that got me started, and it was just sort of like a Trojan horse thing, because I built two costumes for my kids. I built a stormtrooper and a shore trooper. I got the kits and I put them together, and it was for them.
Right.
And then I realized, like, I had so much fun doing it, and they had these kick-ass costumes. I thought, well, why are they having all the fun? I want to wear my costume. And so that's how I got started. So the Imperial costumes, they look amazing. I love the armor, the look of it. Building it is a challenge. There's just something about the structure to them that just, people, when they see a stormtrooper, somebody dressed up like a stormtrooper, or anybody with a helmet on, they just, wow. If it's done well, there's a big wow factor that people really, really kind of love. And I love the idea of you can put on a helmet and be sort of anonymous, but still part of a big group. The rebel costumes are way more comfortable to wear. I'll say that. Like the pilot costume, like the fact that I can sit down in it is tremendous. If you've got armor on, it's, people know you can't sit down in stormtrooper armor. You can't kneel down very easily. You get armor pinches, little pieces, two pieces of the armor will pinch very sensitive spots on your body, between your legs, behind your knees, your elbows. There's always that tweaking, and it takes forever to sort of suit up and get disrobed with all that. The rebel costumes, the one thing I love about them is they are very mobile. All the costumes are hot. Everything, like, you put on a cosplay, anything from Star Wars, you're gonna be sweaty. But it's that lovely, feeling of when you know you've nailed it, and you go out in public and people see the costume, and you can see the joy in their eyes, because they recognize you from where you're at. Like, you're like, oh my god, you're from Star Wars. They might get the character wrong. They might go, oh my god, you're Darth Vader, and you go, no, I'm actually a TIE pilot, but that's cool. You recognize them from Star Wars. it's that whole from every age range. I've seen hardened construction workers who swear a blue mile stop and grin from ear to ear, like a little kid when they see you in costume. People honking their horns as they're driving by. It's just this wonderful feeling of knowing you've done your job right and you're making people happy. And that's what I really love about cosplay as well. And the 501st, they take that to the next level because they dress up for charities. And so they'll show up at events, and that's the wow factor. And people want to get their pictures taken with them. And they raise money for children's hospitals and different charitable organizations. And it's like, yeah, it's the best of both worlds. You get to dress up like a plastic spaceman and help people in need. That's a win-win.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I also love kind of the details that you've added to some of your costumes, or maybe specifically the Rebel one. You put Appa
Yeah.
and OKCU and Arabesh on the helmet. That's so much fun.
You're the first one to notice that. It's been on my helmet for 2 years, and no one's ever mentioned that. So,
it's become like this thing where if I see Arabesh, it's like, well, now I have to like take the time. I'm getting better and better at reading it, but it's almost a challenge anytime it pops up.
bravo.
So I think that's a good time to transition into. So what is it like going from making your own costume to getting to step into one that Lucasfilm has made for you, and getting to be in the universe? How did everything with joining the Mandalorian come about?
That's serious next level. I feel like Cinderella at the ball type thing. You don't believe it. You're just this huge Star Wars nerd growing up with it, and suddenly you get the opportunity to be part of that universe. It's just pinch me. Um, it all started back like, and a bunch of stuff had to happen for this to happen. So if you want to subscribe to the idea of fate, um, it all started like 25, 26 years ago when I was working at the Factory Theater in Toronto, Ontario, and I met this young woman by the name of Deborah Chow. And for those of you who don't know, Deborah Chow is one of the directors of The Mandalorian season 1, and she's also in charge of a little series called Obi-Wan that's going to be, is either shooting now or it's going to be premiering soon in the next year or so. So, but back then we were just a couple of like young adults who were just trying to. I wanted to be an actor, she wanted to be a filmmaker, and we connected because we were both working at a theater that was going bankrupt, which was hilarious. And out of the blue, one day she said, "Hey, Paul, I'm shooting the short film. Do you want to be in it?" But yeah, for sure. So we spent a day in Toronto's Chinatown. I had a trench coat and a fedora, and I played this down on his luck gumshoe who was trying to solve some sort of case. So we spent the day of me just walking through Chinatown and talking to people. It was all MOS, no dialogue. And then she disappeared, and I didn't see Deb again for 25 years. And I was at the Unforgettable Gala in Los Angeles. I've been invited to take part of this gala, and what it is in Los Angeles every year, the Asian American community they have an award celebration for celebrating Asian Americans in media, and so they invited the cast of Kim's Convenience there, and I was there. First time in LA, we're at the Beverly Hilton. I'm kind of in awe of the whole experience of being in Los Angeles, and Deb jumps in front of me out of the blue and says, "Do you remember who I am?" I'm like, "Yes, Deb, what the hell?" And so I was like, "Well, what happened to you?" And she said, the short film that I was in got her into Columbia Film School, and learned to become a filmmaker, and then tried to become a director. And she directed a few episodes of things in Canada, but the opportunities weren't here for her. So she went down south, and then she started working consistently on shows like Fear the Walking Dead, like Jessica Jones, like Better Call Saul, all these little boutique type shows that no one's ever heard of. No, like these great things. And then she was working on The Mandalorian. And when she told me that, my jaw dropped to the ground. I said, "Oh my God, I just Mandalorian. It's amazing." And she said, "That's great, because I've been trying to get in touch with you because Dave Filoni is a fan of Kim's Convenience, and he's trying to write something for you, a part for you." And I was like, "F off. Really? Like, come on, pull the other one." And she was like, "No, yeah. Like, Dave's wife, Anne, had discovered Kim's Convenience, and she said, "Dave, you got to watch this." And he ended up really enjoying the show. And Dave and Ann, they're both really, really they're proponents of diversity and inclusivity. And it was one of those pure dumbass luck things that they happened to see the show that I was in and they liked it. And then there was that connection with Deb. And then, it was like 2 degrees of separation type thing. And she said, when Deb told me that Dave was trying to write something for me, I grabbed her elbow and I said, "You do realize I have like 7 or 8 Star Wars cosplays at home." And I showed her my Instagram page where I had some of my 501st approved costumes. And she said, "Oh my God, send these to me. I'm going to send them to Dave." And so I did, and she did. And he texted back right away and said he could just show up in his costume. I didn't have to go to wardrobe. Um, and that's how it all kind of started. They invited me to visit the set. I went, and I had to go. I had to go back home the next day. She'd invited me. Said, "What are you doing tomorrow?" And I said, "I got to go back home." But 3 weeks later, I came back to Los Angeles just to visit the set, and I didn't realize how big a deal it was because they'd closed off the set. It was one of these things where it's like no visitors. This has got to be completely secretive.
Mhm.
But it helps when Dave Filoni wants you to be a guest. And so he worked it so that I could be there, which was I didn't realize this until afterwards, and I'm tremendously grateful for that opportunity. So I got to visit, and I met Jon Favreau, and I watched them shoot that one scene. It was in the hangar bay in Mos Eisley, and Amy Sedaris was in it, and it was the first reveal of baby Grogu, who's coming down, and I saw it, and I thought, "What is that? Oh my God! Don't tell anybody." It's like, this is gonna break the internet. And so that was tremendous, just seeing that and seeing the volume for the first time, and that's the 3D, the studios they have where they're displaying a 3D environment, or a high def environment on the screens. Um, and so that was mind blowing. And then I got to watch Deb shoot a couple of scenes in the other studio, and it was the one where they were all around the campfire. I think it's episode 7, and then that huge winged dragon comes down and attacks
Mm.
them. So I got to see them do the stunts on that, and that was tremendous. And then afterwards, Dave took me on a tour of the set. I got to see the costume departments, the props departments, all the different things. He showed me the production offices, and I died. I was like, "Are you kidding me? I could just drop dead." And yeah, good life, good life. Um, and then I went home, and it was kind of like, "Oh, I can't believe that kind of happened." It was a big whirlwind. A few months later, uh, Deb, she's in town for we fast forward and it's like September, and there's a Toronto Film Festival going on, and Deb's in town visiting, and we have lunch together, and she's like, "Dave, he's still trying to write something for you." And I keep telling him it's got to be bigger, not this, it's got to be more. And that's great, but it's killing me. It's like saying we've got a big surprise for you, and we keep trying to make it bigger.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like I get how the industry works. And there's best intentions where you kind of go, we have you in mind, we want to work with you. But I understand that a lot of times it doesn't work out for whatever reason, scheduling, studios want something different. It's a business, so I get it. Uh, and so imagine my surprise in October when my my agent calls and says, "So Lucasfilm is asking for your availability." And that was it. That's what started it. And it was tremendous because I said yes right away. I had no idea what the role was going to be. They have code names for all the parts, and the code name was Foodie Pilot, and I was like, "Foodie Pilot? Is he trucks like what?" I was trying to be so literal with it, and no idea. And funny story was they said because I was trying to find out what the character was. My agent said, "Well, they apparently John and Dave like to tell the actors personally what the roles are going to be like." So I'm like, "Okay, so he'll call you." But oh, that's so weird. That is so weird. Jon Favreau is going to call me. Okay. And one night, and I've told this story before, and I'm going to tell it again because it's a great story. I missed the call because because I was eating KFC. My family and I, we were having. I wasn't like sitting there in my underwear eating a bucket of chicken. My family had ordered KFC, which is it's a guilty pleasure of mine, and I was actually serving it out to my kids. And my phone was down. I was about to sit down and start eating when I just checked my phone. And of course, John saying, "Hey, we missed you. Give us a call back." I was like, so I had to call back, but it was awesome because he filled me in on who Carson Teva was, and he didn't have a last name at that point, and he described him as he's kind of like a traffic cop. He's there. They've got a lot of territory. He gives the to cover. It's the New Republic, and this is the Outer Rim, and they're kind of like the U.S. Marshals. They got a lot of ground to cover and very, very limited manpower. And so he's there. They're doing a sweep for him, giving Mando a really, really hard time. So I was like, yeah, I'm in. I love that. And then it happened really, really fast. They got me a work visa to fly down, and before I knew it, I was down in Los Angeles. And right after I landed, they whisked me away to the studios to get fitted for my wardrobe. And that's a whole other fantastic story.
I please.
Oh yeah,
I'd love to hear it again. I've heard it, but like everyone tagged me in this story because
right. Oh, is that?
This is my wife got this for me for my birthday a while back. I mean, I love Biggs, so everyone's like, you have to hear this story.
Yeah. So they're for a flight suit, a Rebel flight suit. And it was tailor made. They got my measurements and they made it from scratch. They built it, and it was it's beautiful, right? Because whenever people know when you get something tailored to your measurements, it's going to be boss. And so I have it on, and then there's a story of, and I love this because it was just the convergence of so many things in my life at that moment. The two wardrobe people were fantastic. Just and I was looking at them kind of going, well, you guys, they hadn't quite built it yet, and they're trying to figure out how to rig it together and how the leg holes went and whatnot. And they were very not apologetic, but they were saying, hey, like we love our jobs, we're good at our jobs, but we're Star Trek fans. And so this stuff is kind of it's a little bit different for us. No worries, no worries. I was just happy to be in the room. And then I said, hey, you know what, guys, if you don't mind, I actually have photos of this. I built this costume, and I've got all these photos of how this ejection harness is sort of constructed and how it's attached. If you want to use them, go ahead. And they were over the moon. They said, yeah, great. So we worked together. And then finally we got the costume, and it looks amazing. I'm in it, and I can't believe it. I'm dressed as a pilot, a Rebel Alliance pilot. And then they said, okay, well, we need to take a reference photo of you in full kit, but we don't have your helmet because it's being repainted right now. So we've got this placeholder for you instead. And they pull out this Rubbermaid bin, and they open it up, and I look inside, and I see this helmet, and it's got Biggs's the emblems on it, and I recognize it right away. I'm like, is that's Big Starklighter's helmet? Like, yeah, how'd you know? It's like, and I look at it and say, is that like the real thing though? Because it looked old. It was like old. Like the foam on the inside was all yellowy and kind of crumbly. It looked like it had seen some action. And he said, yeah, it's the actual thing. And they gave it to me, and I could see Garrick Hagon, like the name in there. And then it just kind of hit me, and they said, put it on. And I was like, are you kidding me? To see, I saw that, I recognized the helmet, and I was not expecting to actually wear on my head something that I had seen on the screens all those years ago, over 40 years ago, and to have that piece of living history on my head. And I started to cry. And they took the picture, and I begged. I said, look, I'm going to keep this for myself. Can I just please have a photograph for myself? So I actually have a picture of myself with Big's helmet on, and full out crying in it. And that's like, there's so many moments in this journey that I thought couldn't top it, and every next moment kept doing that. Um, and as a fan, you don't realize how lucky we all are to have something like this that we can love and then we can complain about and argue about and this and that. I think the one thing that sort of unites us is a passion for how it affects our imaginations and what it's meant to all of us in our lives. But for me in that moment, to be able to sort of studying and learning cosplay and everything finally just sort of like having that focus in that moment where we kind of go, well, there you go, kid, put it on. You're coming in. Yeah, I felt like Rudy about to go into the football game. Put me in, coach. So it was, yeah. I still can't believe it. I can't. And I've been really, really happy with the support. Like so many people were so happy for me, and that meant a lot too. Because I like to see the best part of the Star Wars community is the community itself and the support that we like to give each other. And so when one of us wins and gets to do that, I think we all kind of win in that way too. And I was, am I cutting in and out?
Just a little bit, yeah. Just right at the end there, you cut out.
Such a poignant moment. No, yeah. So, yeah, and then the next thing I knew, they said, we want to take you to set. JF wants to talk to you. And I was like, who's JF? Jon Favreau. Holy shit. Okay. And so he drive me to the set, and I'm watching and looking at it, and like we're in the studio lot. We weren't in the volume. They shoot other things in this. They have a studio lot about a mile away from the indoor studios, and they've recreated the entire town of Navarro right there. It's just stunning. And they have the other sets too. They had the sets from Tatooine as well, like the cantina where Cobb Vanth and Mando are in. I had no idea what that was at the time. Like I knew it was on Tatooine. I knew it was a cantina, but it wasn't the cantina
Mhm.
at Mos Eisley. And so it was great because John, he took me for a tour of all the different sets, and we nerded out over different things. And I was just gushing gratitude. I was like, "Thank you so much." Like, I'm sorry, I'm not usually or the kid who's allowed to go into Willy Wonka's factory or into Santa's workshop in the North Pole for the first time. Um, that's how I felt. And John was super cool, and he said, "Hey, you know what? Uh, that's awesome because this is they work with it every day, and they love seeing actors or other professionals come in and just react that way because it reminds them of why they're doing it and what keeps them happy." And he said, "Look, I also want to happen." So it was again, and then he gave me a challenge coin, which is awesome. The main challenge coin. He's like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah.
He pulled that out of his wallet, which was like a George Costanza wallet, which is hilarious. I thought, and then he pulled it out. It's like, "Are you kidding me?" And it had the Mandalorian script on it. And of course, the first thing I did when I got back to my hotel room was I deciphered it. Like,
Uh-huh.
just like, okay, so what does this mean? And this was before season one had even aired, and it said, "This is the way." And I thought, "What does that mean? This is the way." Okay, that's interesting. Anyways, so yeah.
That's so cool. So what was it to like, let's just keep the next step. So now you're in costume, you're in character. What's it like to sit in the cockpit of an X-wing?
So the first time I was there was for the episode that Carl directed, and that was episode 4. And I was decidedly nowhere near an X-wing.
Mhm.
And that was interesting too, because Carl was like he's OG, like he is every bit of that icon from the '80s, and you look at it, there's a quiet intensity and a confidence that exudes from him. And he really does. He's this guy that you look at him, you go, and I remember because I made the mistake of, well, not a mistake. It was crew lunch, and I was there, and he was sitting there at a table by himself, and I thought, he's going to be directing me. Our scene is together. You know, I'm an award-winning Canadian actor. I'm going to do my best. I'm going to go over. I'm going to say hi. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to have lunch with Carl Weathers. And I went up, I had my tray, and I felt like such a douche nozzle. But I was like, I came up and said, "Hey, do you mind if I sit down and have lunch with you?" And he's eating, and he's working in his head on the next shots. And immediately I'm like, "Oh shit, why did you do that? Just you should just left the man alone." And he looks up at me and he's chewing his food and he does the coolest thing. He kicks the chair out in front of me on the other side and he tray him halfway down. He says, "Just as long as you don't expect a conversation." And I kind of half frozen. I thought, "Oh, fuck. I'm such an idiot." So I sat down and I thought, I'm not going to say a word to him. I'm just going to eat my lunch, be pleasant. I'm going to finish and I'm going to leave. That's it. So we ate in silence for a while. And then he looked at me and he was like, "So whose friend are you again?" And I was like, Dave's." He's like, "Huh, okay." And we were quiet. And I'm thinking, oh man, and now he thinks I'm just some sort of like a sycophantic sort of hanger on or whatever who's got no skill, no game. And then he kind of opened up and he's like, "Where are you from? Like, what's your heritage?" And I explained, "I'm Korean Canadian." He goes, "Oh, you look like an old friend of mine. Did you ever hear of a guy named Pat Morita?" I was like, "Yes." And that was kind of my first time meeting Carl, and he's tremendous. And I won him over because we had to shoot that scene. It was that scene with Cara Dune, um, and with Gina Carano, and it was probably one of the most nerve-wracking scenes I've had to shoot because it was everybody's there. They're watching you, and they're like, "Who the hell is this guy?" And I'm in there, and I could not have had a more supportive scene partner. Gina was tremendous. She was very, very, um, she was very open. She gave a lot as a scene partner, which was awesome. And then I got a lot of redirects from Carl and then from John, and really they were able to sort of get the performance that they wanted. And at the end, it was kind of cool because it was like I passed the test. They're like, "Okay, he's got some game. He's got some craft." The next day it was like it was so much more relaxed. I think people were a little bit worried that this guy, this friend of Dave's, was going to screw everything up, right? So when I came back in February to fly in the X-wing, I was just like, "Hey man, I've been through this. I love this. I'm waiting now to get into the cockpit." And they used it was from Rogue One, the
Mhm.
same cockpits that they used for it, and like it's I mean, come on, the detail is tremendous, right? Like they have the long version. It's not the full Starfighter, obviously, but we had to climb up a ladder to get to it, like the flight ladder, and you had to climb in and try not to step on any of the controls and break it. But like all the lights are practical. They had little slots where they could. I mean, they cheat a little bit. They use smartphones, right? So the screens, but then they cover it over so they can have video displays kind of happening there. But the switches all worked. There was a flight stick with and immediately I'm going, okay, that's the targeting computer, and I'm working out all the different controls, and then the canopy opened and closed, and they had an R2 unit behind me, um, and I loved it. I was there because I'm in and I'm sweating because it's hot and I'm nervous,
Mhm.
but I'm still sort of like, yeah, it's like this is it, this is what I want, and we're in the volume, and the guys who are working they call it the brain bar, they start they start messing with the starfield, and the starfield starts to do this, and I know I'm not moving, but every other sense in my body is telling me you're being violently thrown back.
Yeah.
I'm like, ah, and Peyton Reed, who's directing the episode, goes, "Yeah, I know it can be a little bit disorienting. If you start to feel sick, just focus on a point inside the cockpit and just stare at that. Try to ignore what's going on outside." Um, and that was just like, okay, that was great. But I mean, talk about an immersive experience. You're there. They've got a projection of the Razor Crest to my right, and to the right of that is the other X-wing with Trapper Wolf's, who Trapper Wolf is piloting. Um, as a performer, it's all right there. You don't have to like act to a tennis ball or to a blank screen. Like it's there, which is great. And I didn't want to get out. You know, I kind of felt like part of me wanted to screw up a bunch of times just so we could just keep going. But in between takes, I'm like, I'm flying, making noises and reenacting the trench run. Um, and then when we did the chase sequence on Malto Crease, uh, it was just like it's better than any ride at any amusement park you're on because it's going like they have the digital background going and you're reacting to it and I'm getting direction from Peyton saying, okay, you really lean into it and you're really feeling the G's on this one. And it's neat because we haven't really seen an X-Wing perform in an atmosphere before. It's always been space battles. So in an atmosphere, it's got like that whole idea of the physics of an actual aircraft as it's cutting through an atmosphere. And I know X-Wings, they have inertial dampeners and stuff like that. So if you wanted to, you could play it where none of that should affect you. Um, but it's so much fun to play the idea that he's got the dampeners turned down so he can feel what the craft is doing while he's
I
chasing.
love that. That's the kind of pilot Carson is.
Yeah, you know,
And I just love that you know that. It's so much fun.
like I said, nerd, and and it's that whole idea too, because that's how I think in the novelization, that's how Porkins dies. He's got his inertial dampeners turned up so high, he doesn't realize he's in that huge, massive dive to pull, and he can't pull out in time because he has no idea that his X-wing is going down like that. And so when Big's young pull up, he doesn't realize that like he doesn't have the space to pull out of it, and that's why he explodes. So like that's the next level sort of like deep cut nerdy things that I sort of kept to myself
Uh-huh.
there, but it all informs your choices. And unfortunately, we didn't use a lot of those, a lot of the footage that we shot chasing the Razor Crest. But man, that was so much fun to do. That was so much fun to do.
Do you have, or maybe they gave you and then you probably can't say, but is there backstory for Carson? Did they, or do you have your own headcanon for it? Did you make anything up?
Yeah, no, there's no. I mean, if they have one, they haven't told me about it yet. He didn't even have a last name until after we'd shot it, and it was great because Dave texted me, said, "What do you think of this last name of Teva?" I was like, sure, but that's great." And I went, "Thank you so much for even asking me." He's like, "No, no, we want to make sure that you're happy." I'm like, "Dudes, I'm so happy already. You could have called him Carson Garbage Knocker, and I would have." Right? Like, it's just like it's one of those things where we go, "Yeah, man, like I got to play in your sandbox." And I'm just beside myself. So yeah, there was no real backstory to him other than the stuff that's in the script. Like we knew he served during Alderaan. Whether he was actually part of any of the main battles, like the Death Star, the battle against on Yavin 4, whether he was part of the Hoth defense, whether he was part of the final assault on the second Death Star on Endor, or whether he participated in the Battle of Jakku. They've left it open, which is cool. And I asked Dave, and he said, "Well, it's a big universe, and not everybody fought in all the battles and stuff." And immediately my mind started to go because I'm a comedian. I thought, oh, well, he's the guy that for whatever reason has always missed the big battles, and he's pissed. He's super pissed. Like he just missed the Battle of Yavin because he had a bad power converter and his X-wing couldn't take off. And on Hoth, again, he was part of had to protect the transport, so he didn't get a chance to really fight the ground forces. And in Return of the Jedi, he was like he had diarrhea in the Outer Rim or whatever, and so he couldn't make it. And so I was joking about that, and Dave was like, no. Um, but it's cool. I love the fact that he is obviously he's an older pilot, and he's been around the block. And I love that they wrote in the fact that he knows enough that he can't be slavish to the actual letter of the law. That in order to succeed in the Outer Rim, they got to play in the gray areas a
Mm.
lot, and he's smart enough to realize that and let Mando go and try to get local support from all the different systems because they can't do it by themselves. Yeah, so that's kind of cool playing that type of a role, that tired sort of vet who nobody really listens to. Yeah, he's that beat cop that knows the ground and the players change, but he knows the game, and he's trying to survive out there. I love that about him. There's
Yeah.
something really sort of romantic about that idea of this guy that's just there. He's been there for a while.
What is Trapper Wolf like as a wingmate?
He's great. He's great. He is. I mean, I don't know any of his backstory. I teased Dave about it because in the first season, it was, obviously it was Rick, Deb, and Dave playing, cameos as the New Republic fighters, and he gives Deb a hard time because if you look at that episode, she just goes in on her own. Nobody commands her. They said, "Oh, it looks like they're launching something." She goes, "I'm in it," and she goes in and she starts right away on a strafing run. And so they always joke and they go, "Oh, it's slow down there. Like nobody ever gave you any orders, Sash Kettle." And so I think the original idea was for Deb to be my wingmate in that episode, but she was busy with Obi-Wan, obviously. And then she also said, "Dave, you can't put all the Asians together all the time, right?" Like, so, and so it was fun because Dave wanted to. It was a chance for us to hang out a little bit too. Now he's super busy, so I totally appreciate the fact that he took the time out of his schedule to come and play in that episode because he hates being in front of the camera.
We've been joking that like I hope it's a running gag that just Trapper keeps showing up and it's like John's just shoving him in an X-wing cockpit, like get back in there.
It's great, and with Peyton too, he's a huge fan of this of Star Wars as well, and it's a lot of fun because when you're working with people who obviously love the source material and love the universe and have a sense of humor and know not to take things too seriously, it just it makes storytelling that much more fun to do because it is, again, we're telling an adventure story. It's steeped within lore that we all are familiar with and love, and but we're not above, or it's not above us poking fun at it and realizing that, hey, what we do, we're so blessed and we're so lucky, and it's just like, how can you not have fun shooting Star Wars? So
Yeah.
instead of getting caught up in the importance of it, and I think that's part of the reason why the Mandalorian is so successful is they don't take themselves too seriously. I mean, it's a serious business and they want to tell a great story, but they're doing something that they love. And I think that's evident, and you can see it stamped on every episode. It's not like somebody's begrudgingly directing an episode or like acting in a series. Everybody's in it because they love it, and that's fantastic. Like that's lightning in a bottle.
Yeah, I keep thinking about something that Taika Waititi said in the gallery behind the scenes thing last year. He said that, yeah, Star Wars doesn't take itself too seriously, but it does believe in itself, and like that has just stuck with me so hard. That, yeah, you can have an episode where a frog lady and a frog man are hugging, and it's like, this is the most emotional I've ever been.
Yeah, no, it's touching, and I love that. Dave also said something too. He said it was the whole idea of, do you go photorealistic or do you go believable? And he says always go believable. People will forget any sort of shortcomings of anything if they believe in it. And that's what I love. It's like they create believable characters, believable scenarios that people can relate to. And so you kind of go, yeah, frog people, but they love each other. And you can tell they love each other. Um, it's great. It's great.
So what was it like as they finally started to come out, your episodes, just seeing the reaction to it? People, I think Carson has had an overwhelmingly positive response. How has that felt just to see yourself on screen
Yeah.
and feel that?
I was really nervous, to be honest. I didn't know because I had no idea how any of it was going to really look or how people were going to react to my character. And my phone, I woke up to my phone because I'm on East Coast time, and people in the West Coast, it drops for them at like midnight, and
Mhm.
that's 3 in the morning for us.
Right.
But about 3:45 to 4 o'clock, my phone, I guess, was receiving all these messages, and I woke up at about 5, and I had hundreds of notifications and messages and texts from friends from the West Coast and from fans, and on all my socials, and my accounts suddenly started to increase in like followers and likes and stuff like that. And it was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. And I got swept up, and I have to apologize for people because I did kind of drop a bunch of spoilers by retweeting people's tweets and stuff like that, that I was appearing in it. And it was a big, Kim's Convenience, they call it a sneak attack. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so I felt really bad about that. I was like, oh no, I'm sorry. I just got swept up in the moment. I didn't mean to ruin it for anybody. But it was, yeah, I mean, so tremendous. My family, we have a ritual Friday mornings. When the Mando episode drops, everybody, we try to watch before school. And so everybody gets up super early and everybody's got to get ready. So you got to, shower, brush your teeth, have your breakfast, do all this, get dressed, have your school stuff ready to go. And then we sit down and we'll watch it. And only if the episode is short enough. And there's some mornings where people sleep in, but it's like, oh, the episode's only 33 minutes long, so we can still do it. But we will watch the episode as a family together. And so sitting there and watching it with my kids was it's an amazing experience. It's just I was so nervous, and my kids were like, they were cheering and whooping and hollering and jumping up and down and go, that's dad, look at that. And then we shh, quiet, and we watched it, and we listened to it. And by the end, we're like, can we rewind it? We want to watch that part again. And that for me was just like, okay, I did it right. It wasn't like, dad, let's fast forward to the next bit and see what happened. And it was great because my kids believed it. They believed it and they loved it, and they're biased, but it's like also my eldest is a teenager and he'd rather die sometimes than acknowledge my existence, right? And so for him to kind of go, Dad, you did a great job, meant everything to me. And so that was so surreal. And then just watching it again, because I hadn't seen it and it was hard to believe. Here I am sitting in my living room in Toronto, Ontario, and there I am in a galaxy far, far away, finally sort of realizing my dreams of being part of that universe. And I didn't look out of place, if that makes any sense. I didn't.
Not at all.
Yeah. Hey, I believe it. I believe that that this guy's part of the New Republic and has been around the block a few times. Like, I believe that. So that was really cool.
And I mean, it's still kind of continuing because they've announced stories like Rangers of the New Republic and Rogue Squadrons. And like, I feel like that Rangers show, especially, it's right there at the same timeline. Like,
yeah, I know, your lips to God's ears, right? Like, fingers crossed and everything. Yeah, I don't know. It just, for me, it's like, well, the odds are good, right? Because if my character, unless if my character's still around and he's been in 2 episodes, he's played not a huge part, but like a little bit of a pivotal moment. Like he's that scene with Cara Dune where he offers her the badge, and she turns him down at first, but then he reminds her of, hey, you're from Alderaan, right? You lost everybody, right? Here's your chance to do something about it. And she's wearing it the next time we see her. I love that idea of him just sort of popping in from time to time. So fingers crossed, we'll see what happens. And I certainly wouldn't say no.
I didn't think you would. We've been going just about an hour, so I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I do want to just talk about Kim's Convenience real quick, because like I think that my wife and I, Molly and I, we got into Kim's Convenience like right after that episode aired, the Peyton Reed Spider one. We'd heard about Kim's Convenience for so long, and then we were like, this sounds like a good excuse to finally watch it, and we blew through it. It's so funny. It's so like heartfelt. But I just thought, what would you say to Star Wars fans, since this is that's who's going to be listening to this, to encourage them to watch Kim's?
Yeah, for all the reasons that you said, Kim's Convenience is it's like putting on a nice warm sweater when it's cold out. It's comforting, it's good humor, it's funny, but it's not your standard run-of-the-mill sitcom. It's got a lot of heart to it. It deals with a lot of family dynamics, and you might not be Korean in your heritage, but you will understand the relationships between parents and their children and vice versa. The writing is tremendous. The performances are great. You get to see me as a character who's completely unlike Carson Teva. And it's been interesting because, a lot of fans of Kim's Convenience started watching The Mandalorian just because they heard, oh my God, Appa's on Kim's Convenience. But the reverse is happening too. Kim's has gained a lot of fans because of, oh my God, Carson Teva, he's on this other show called Kim's Convenience. Let's check it out. and it's been a great sort of mutual beneficial society turn of events that's happened. So Kim's Convenience, again, it's something that sort of gave me the opportunity to be on The Mandalorian. So if you want to check it out, I would love that. And I think you might just stick around. And like you said, Alex, it is supremely bingeable. It's like eating potato chips. You just can't have one episode. You can just start mowing them down. And before you know it, you've blown through an entire season.
Is there any like competitiveness between you and Simu because now you're in Star Wars and he's in the MCU, so you
No,
trying to one up each other?
no, we're both so happy for each other. When we heard that, when Simu told me that he had booked the role of Shang-Chi, we were so proud of him. And he's been working his ass off for the last year just shooting that, and during the pandemic and all the delays and stuff, and then coming back and him shooting season 5 of Kim's Convenience was tremendous. I mean, his work ethic was unparalleled, and he really brought it. He was so happy to hear that I was in Star. He knows what a fan I am of Star Wars, just like I know how much of a fan he is of the Marvel superhero universe. And so it's just both. It's this great sort of like mutual admiration society where we're like, hey, and we get to sort of trade stories back and forth of being on set. Um, and of course, I mean, his experience is so much bigger because as the lead on a superhero movie where you have the first Asian superhero led sort of cast and story is a tremendous thing. And we're all excited for it. I think it's premiering in July of 2021 now. And we can't wait. It's just, I'm really, really looking forward to seeing what he brings. And we're all rooting for him.
Well, Paul, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. This was so much fun. I wish that we could just keep going and talk about Battlestar Galactica for another hour and stuff, but
Anytime, Alex, honestly, this is like, I keep saying it's the best interviews are the ones where you just feel like you're talking with friends. And, you know, I'm open. Like, if you want to have me back, I'll talk about Battlestar Galactica. I'll talk about Star Trek. I'll talk about any of that stuff. I love it. And hey, I apologize for not being able to play Star Wars Squadrons with you. I'm at the noob level right now for everybody. My kids have been hogging the game system. I got a little bit of time. And so I don't want to pour showing because, you know, as a representative of the New Republic, Starfighter.
oh, sure, of course. And we're in the briefing room this time. Maybe sometime down the line we'll hop in the cockpit together. I'd love to be Carson's wingmate. But for now, just thank you. Where can people follow you online, on Instagram, everywhere?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @BitterAsianDude. Again, that's Bitter Asian Dude. I have a YouTube channel called Bitter Asian Dude Inc. Dube. Oh my gosh, Bitter Asian Dude Inc. I do a lot of unboxings. It's for me, it's reviews and unboxings. I want to sort of embrace the geek part of my life as well. A lot of people know me as Appa, and I want people to know me as who I am because I think a lot of people are surprised that I'm such a nerd. And you can also follow me on Instagram at Angry Appa. And I have a website, bitterasiandude.com. You can visit that. We're trying to get things rolling and sort of get the word out there and celebrate all things geeky and build that community of mutual respect and you know, helping each other out during these tough times.
I'll put links to all of those down in the description, so please do check them all out. This was so much fun, such a joy. I really hope we see Carson some more, but for now, thank you all for watching and hanging out with us, and may the Force be with you.
Okay, see you.